Hey guys, welcome back to another Soulforge video. It is now Monday, the first day of the week, and the game is reset. So we have a new event, we have new things in the Soulforge, all that good stuff. So let's get right into it. Let's see what's going on. We have a new troop here that we will check out after we go to the Soulforge. Soulforge, and I usually start with weapons as always, and then I just go to troops after that. So for weapons, we don't have a whole lot going on in here. We have two different doomed weapons, but the doomed ram is a new weapon here for the Tower of Doom event. That's what's the main event going on this week. Now, I would say get it over in that shop because you can do it with gems over there. I never recommend getting these for diamonds if you can get them with gems instead. Doomed potions, these doomed weapons are not that great. It just gives life to all allies. It's really not worth spending the 900 diamonds on it. The best doom weapons are the ones that convert a color of gems to doom skulls. Those are the best ones. Those ones are probably worth the 900 diamonds, but that's not in the shop this week. Dark staff, nothing amazing here. Just deals double damage if there's a dark storm, creates a dark storm. At the very bottom, you have two more weapons. Dark shot, which is kind of an odd weapon. It deals damage to an enemy, creates purple gems boosted by webbed enemies. The only combination that would probably be good with this weapon is the Arachnean Weaver, because it does web all enemies. But I do have this weapon already, and I just never use it, so I don't recommend crafting it. However, Book of Brambles is a pretty decent weapon because of the troops that are considered elves are pretty good. And I'll show a couple of teams here in a little bit with those elf troops that I'm talking about that are pretty decent. But this here is one of those weapons where it generates mana based on how many elf allies are in your team. So it's going to generate the most mana for your team if you have all of your 4 troops elves and if they're still alive. So each time one of your troops dies, this weapon will generate less mana. So that's the weakness or the downside of it. But it's a pretty good weapon considering, I don't always recommend these types of weapons, but this one I think I'm going to give like a soft recommendation. It's not a must-have weapon, but if you can spare the 300 diamonds and the jewels here to get it, then I would say probably get it, but on one condition: only if you do have some of the best elf troops, which is like Arachnean Weaver, the Yao Guy, and I'll show you a couple of teams with those, with this weapon here after we look at the troops that's in the forge. So moving on here, let's go through the summoning stones really quickly. Blue, nothing I'm going to recommend there. Green, nothing here. Red. Okay, so Goblin Rocket is a pretty good troop early on, but I don't think it's worth spending jewels for it. Wisp is a pretty decent enemy, or a decent troop to use against enemies, because it will dispel them all. That's really important. Jumping the board and you can gain an extra turn. It does start with 75% mana if you unlock all of its traits. I do use it in a few teams, but not really crazy often, so I don't really recommend trying to get it with the jewels. Let's see here. Child of Summer is a pretty good troop for certain team combinations, but it should be easy enough to get in keys, I would think, so I wouldn't recommend trying to get it with jewels. For purple, nothing here. And then for brown, yeah, really nothing here. A lot of times I usually recommend like one troop out of the summoning stones, but this week I'm not going to recommend trying to get any in the summoning stones, so there's that. And right here we can see already there is Hydra in the forge. For 800 diamonds, you can have the wonderful, terrible, absolutely worst legendary in the game, Hydra. Yeah, so don't craft that at all. I wouldn't recommend crafting any legendaries, but Glaceon is in the forge this week, and if you're like level 1000 and you just have not been lucky enough to get Glaceon, I would say go ahead and craft Glaceon because it is honestly one of my favorite legendary cards in the game. It does have a high mana cost of 20, but it does have brown mana, so if you do have Mountain Crusher, that right there is going to be a good combination. But yeah, it transforms yellow gems to blue, and then it will transform red gems to Doom Skulls, freezes the strongest enemy. It does have a pretty high damage reduction for skull damage, which is 65%. One of the great things I like about it is that it has two different transforms. So it transforms yellow gems to blue. So even if you don't get a 4 match with transforming red gems to Doom Skulls, if you pay attention with how the yellow gems and the blue gems connect, you can get an extra turn just in that transformation. And that will allow you to get an extra turn, basically, so you can avoid the enemy connecting skulls that might not give you an extra turn, if that makes sense. So Glaceon, though, I think is totally worth a craft if you're close to level 1000 and you don't have it yet. If you're not at close to level 1000 yet, I might say wait a little bit, because you might get lucky and get it in some keys and just keep saving your diamonds for a great mythic that you can craft once you reach 4000. So moving on here quickly to the Mythic Troops, we have Jotnar Storm Shield, we have Scorpius, we have Skady, and we have Sycorax. So really quickly here, I'm going to go through these. Jotnar Storm Shield, although it is, it's not a worst mythic, it's probably about average, especially if you're like big on giants. Like if you took the time to fully trait your Titan class, which you should, focus on fully trading the Titan class so that all giants start with 50% mana. And if you're really big on building a giant team, this is a pretty good troop for those all giant teams, because as you notice here, its damage will be boosted by giant allies. It does also give a random ally a barrier on 4 or 5 matches, which can really save your team sometimes. So not a horrible mythic, but it's not the best. I say, I forget exactly the tier that I ranked it in my mythic tier list, but it is, yeah, it's like average mythic for me. It's not something that I go crazy about. Scorpius, on the other hand, is something that if you don't have it yet, you should craft it, especially if you're trying to farm those metals, because it does lethal damage to any poisoned enemy. And one of the best combinations with Scorpius is another mythic troop called Urali, which will poison all enemies on a 4 or 5 match. So you put these two together with Mountain Crusher, and that is a recipe for successfully grinding out metals in level 12 explore battles. This troop also gives brown allies 1 to all stats at the start of each turn, which is, since it uses brown, it's going to be giving itself 1 to all stats, so that's pretty cool. It's also immune to effects, Devour and Mana Burn. But you don't need Urali, so I would say that even if you don't have Urali, this is worth crafting, because there are other troops in the game, and I'll show you one after we get done here in the Forge, that you can use, that you can get pretty easy in the Underworld, that will, it'll work a little slower than Urali, but it will also allow you to use Scorpius's ability here on lethal damage. So that's a good mythic troop here. Moving on to Skady. This troop has less value now that Lariza came out in the Underworld, which is a legendary troop. It has a Madness Storm. So that troop, a Madness Storm is a blue and a purple gem storm at the very same time. So it's not an exact replacement of Skady, but the fact that you have the potential to have half an Ice Storm going every single turn with that legendary troop, which is much easier to get than this one. It brings the value of this one down a little bit, because I don't really use Skady for its ability here of freezing and mana burning the first 2 enemies, knocking them to the last position, summon a Queen Mab. I don't really ever use Skady's ability. I usually always throw it in when I want an Ice Storm at the start of every turn, so I'm not going to recommend crafting Skady, since Lariza actually exists now, so you can get basically that. Well, and 2, there's also the Jar of Eyes weapon. So if you have the Jar of Eyes weapon and you have that fully upgraded, you can create an Ice Storm every single time you cast it. So that's a really good replacement too for Skady. So I wouldn't recommend crafting it unless you're collecting and that's the last mythic maybe you don't have yet. Now, as far as the last mythic here in the Forge, Sycorax, this guy is a pretty decent mana generator, but the way that I found the best way to use this guy is, since he gives life to all allies of the color that he's going to double on the board, is that the best way that I like to use him is build a team all with the same one of the same 3 colors that it has. So either an all blue team, an all green team, or an all brown team. And that way, whenever you cycle the colors for this troop and double them on the board, you're going to give everything life every time you do it. And one of the troops that recently I used with this one is Megavore. And so Megavore, when it's fully traded, has an 8% chance every time you match 4 or more gems to lethally kill the last enemy. So if you once you get Sycorax going and you just constantly double a mana color on the board, that will it might take a little while because the 8% is pretty low, but it's pretty fun just to keep cycling the mana and doubling it and watch Megavore do its work on those enemies. Now, the other thing to consider is that any troop like this, Sycorax or the Trolls or any kind of troop that generates mana, whether it's destroying gems, exploding gems, or doubling gems on the board, any of those kind of troops are going to work better if you have a storm going on at the same time. So that's something to consider. So this troop, I don't think it's worth crafting because we have Trolls, which are much easier to get than this troop. It's not, if you have Sycorax, it's not going to be like, oh yeah, I can break the game with this troop, basically. So I'm not going to recommend that, but the order in which I would emphasize crafting them is Scorpius, Jotnar Storm Shield, then Sycorax, and finally Skady in 4th place. So that's the order in which I would craft them if I was going to craft all of them. So there you go, guys. That's my opinion on that stuff. I think we're done here in the Forge. Don't have really anything else there. So really quickly here, let's go over a couple of teams with a few of those troops and whatnot. So basically, with Scorpius, this is the team I was talking about for level 12 Explore battles. You have Mountain Crusher in the top. I like to use Apothecary. Some people like to use Leprechaun in that spot. And then we have Scorpius here, and then Urali's down here. And of course, you want this fully traded. Otherwise, Urali makes no sense in this team because you want that poison on all enemies on a 4 or 5 gem match. That's way Scorpius will be able to do its lethal damage. Now, a cheaper version that does not require Urali has the Horned Asp. Now, this is a troop from the Underworld and the Fangmore faction, so you just have to save up some portal shards. It's not a legendary troop, so it should drop for you pretty quickly down there. Hopefully, I got a bunch of them, enough of them to send it to Mythic, so it should be pretty easy to get. And it does have the ability to start with 75% mana. It is a low mana cost of 11, so even if you don't have the 75% starting mana, you should be able to fill this up fairly quickly. It deals splash damage to an enemy. It inflicts bleed and poison on all enemies hit by this spell. Now, splash damage is going to affect the troop that you hit, and the troop above it, and the troop below it. So you're going to be able to poison at least 3 enemies, troops with this Horned Asp in one cast. Now, that's not the entire team, but it's 3/4 of the entire team with a single cast. So Horned Asp, I believe, is a really great cheap alternative to Urali. And so if you don't have Urali, I would still recommend crafting Scorpius because you don't even need to fully trait Scorpius to use its lethal ability here on poisoned enemies. And then you can go get your Horned Asp, put it in a team like this with Mountain Crusher, Apothecary, or the Leprechaun, and then Horned Asp, Scorpius, and you should be able to do some pretty good farming for those medals in Explore battles. Now, as far as that Book of Brambles weapon that I was talking about earlier, here's one team, and of course you can use there's two different elf classes. There's the monk, and then there's the orb weaver. So you can choose between which one you want to use. Both of them start with half mana if you have the King Avlorn legendary here and have it fully traded. So as long as that's in there, either one of those classes is going to start with half mana, and every troop that's an elf is going to start with half mana. So that's a big plus. Now this team right here, we have the weapon up here. We have Tulio here, which is also a great mana generator, so we can choose to enchant like all of these here with one hit on green. And Arachnean Weaver is a great mythic troop, and it uses purple, because if we look here, this weapon is going to generate green gems and purple gems. So you want your elf allies to use either green or purple, and that's why we have the Arachnean Weaver in here, and those other troops there that use green. Now, another team you can use here is you cut out Tulio completely, and you just throw in Yao Gai, because it does use green, and it will be, the Book of Brambles will be generating green, and then the purple. Plus, the other thing here is that Yao is going to transform all purple gems to red, so even if the purple doesn't really connect and fill up your Weaver, it will give a potential transformation connection to fill up your Yao much quicker. So Book of Brambles works pretty well in some of these teams because we have some really strong elf troops, and that's why I just kind of wanted to show you guys a couple of those potential teams. I mean, I've used those teams before in PvP and in certain farming instances, so I can tell you that they do work fairly well. So you know, I don't want to drag this video on too long because we still have to look at the Tower of Doom and all that. Otherwise, I'd go in and I'd show you battles with those. But I want to keep this video under 30 minutes because most of my videos recently have been like encroaching upon like 40-45 minutes, and that's just like way too long. Anyway, so let's go. Let's check out the event kingdom here this week. It is Zulkari is the event kingdom this week. So if you want some of those troops for that kingdom, event keys are what's going to make that happen for you. I forget if the Arachnean Weaver is a Zulkari troop. We're going to find out here. And it is. Okay, so and we have the web spinner. So the two best troops that you can get in this kingdom this week in your event keys is the Arachnean Weaver or the web spinner. The Arachnean Weaver is a mythic troop, and the web spinner is a legendary. So those are the two best ones you can get. So if you don't have either of those and you've been chasing them, opening your event keys this week will give you a chance of acquiring one or both of those troops. Now let's step over into the shop and let's take a look at the new weekly troop that we can get here for glory. It's called the Arachnean Watcher. It's an ultra rare troop, and when we purchase these, we're going to get Arcane Skull trait stones. So if you have any troops or classes that require that Arcane trait stone, you can now purchase those for 300 glory each. Taking a look at its ability, it will gain 30 life boosted by webbed enemies, give all other allies 1/4 of their mana. So it's kind of a mana generator. I do like the fact that they put here give all other allies 1/4 of their mana instead of restricting it to like all blue allies or all purple allies. They do that sometimes and it's like really weird, and it's like nobody's ever going to use a troop like that. And even this troop, I don't think I would use this troop very often. The fact that it's 1/4 of their mana, that troop that I was just showing you guys in the Book of Brambles team, the Tulio troop, is way better of a mana generator than this thing, and I don't see why I would use this over that other one. Anyway, it's immune to some things here: mana drain, silence, fairy fire, and web. Reduces damage from skulls. I mean, I don't really care about it. I don't think it's that great, but I'm just gonna buy it. We'll just buy enough. You know, because I have so much glory these days. I lost like 60,000 when I was trying to get the new mythic, but the only time I really use glory is either for the new monthly mythics or for the weekly event troop here. That's really all I use glory for, and so I try to get the new troop if I can up to mythic right away, because that helps power up your kingdoms more, which gives your kingdom, the troops for those kingdoms, all more stats and all that kind of good stuff. So anyway, let's go over, where's the spoils of war? There it is. They used to have them under the same tab. I really don't like now that they they separated them into different tabs, but whatever. The reason why I get the spoils of war every week is because of the 10 event keys here, and you never know when you're going to be able to open those event keys when you're chasing mythics, and you can just, you know, the more event keys you have, the better your chances are for getting a mythic for that event kingdom. So there's that. So, alright, well, let's go take a look here at the Tower of Doom event that's going on right now, and the troops are restricted to purple, so we're going to have to come up with a team that uses purple. But first of all, let's go here in the shop. Now, you should probably always try to buy at least up to, and when I say buy, I'm not talking about using real money, I'm talking about using the in-game gems, and you can get these gems just by playing the game. You know, collecting your tributes hourly if you can really helps collect a lot of the gems. That's where a lot of mine come from. Guild tasks, you can get gems from that, and treasure maps are also a way you can get gems. So, but I always try to buy up to at least where the weapon is. And we already took a little quick look at this weapon in the Soulforge, but I really don't use these weapons, honestly. These ones that all the Doom weapons that have come out that are not creating Doom skulls, I just don't really ever use them. But I like to buy up to at least that tier, just because it's like, maybe they'll change how these weapons work in the future. Maybe they'll become really good. So, I don't know. I just try to collect them all if I can. So, now we got that. Plus, like, the other good thing, too, is that when you buy up to that level, you're buying these potions. Potion of Enchantment, Potion of Explosion. Those are probably really the two most important ones. Potion of Rejuvenation, then we have Potion of Armor here. And if you kept buying, you would continue to get more potions. Potion of Blessing, Shielding, Potion of Power, things like that. But I don't know, I usually just buy like the first 4 tiers. So, you know, now let's just go and take a look at a team, and I'm not gonna like go into I'm not gonna go through a bunch of battles here, just because it'll take way too long to get up to a high level. Like, it would probably take me like an hour of playing right now just to get up to like level, you know, maybe how many ever this is, 18 battles. I mean, that'll probably only take me up close to like level 12 or 15, depends on what rims I get lucky with. But yeah, that would take way too long for this video. So at a low level, you can pretty much just use any kind of troops that are going to do like damage to all enemies. So you can use a weapon for that, you can use troops for that, whatever works, and that'll allow you just to go through the first like 5 to 7 or 8 Doom levels fairly quickly. And then once it starts to get tough, then you can change things up. So I'm going to probably just show you guys a team that I think works fairly well for higher levels, and just to give you an idea of what you can do. Obviously, there's more team combinations out there, and you can figure out some things on your own and switch it up and whatnot. But this is like a team that just has worked for me in the past at high levels with the purple day. So we're restricted to purple, but that doesn't restrict weapons. So there's no color restrictions on weapons. So we're going to throw in Mang, and then, you know, purple obviously is a restriction for troops. So I'm going to go ahead. I always talk about this troop a lot, and this is one of those times where we can actually use it, which is Azirus. And then I'm going to throw in the Keeper of Souls. We're going to throw him in there. And then we're also going to, what's the other troop that we could put in? Skrymir. So this is kind of just like a quick basic team. You could probably optimize it a lot better. Like, Keeper of Souls might not be necessary. We're going to change the banner to like double purple brown maybe. And Azirus does have Magic Link down here, so we're going to get a bonus purple for that. The other thing, too, that we could do is put in Laraza, because it uses purple and it has a Madness Storm. So there's no blue here, but this is definitely going to give us that. We could do that, or the other thing we could actually do is, I believe Umberwolf has purple. Yes, it does. So this one's probably better, the better option. This is probably the better option besides Laraza, because this one's going to create just a Darkstorm. So since we're not using blue in this team, you could throw this one in here instead of Skrymir, and it would guarantee that you have a lot of purple coming down on the board. The reason why I throw Skrymir in here is because it cleanses, it gives barrier to an ally, gives them a lot of life, and then moves them to the front of the team. So you only want to use this on your Mang, because Mang is only going to be doing its incredible damage with skulls if it's in that top spot. So Skrymir is always going to make sure that it will get moved back to that top spot if in fact your team gets jumbled around. Now, Keeper of Souls is really great because it will allow you to transform any color of gem to skulls. Azirus is great because it'll allow you to transform a selected mana gem into a skull, almost guaranteeing you 3 matches or 4 matches of skulls. So that works really great with Mang. Now, this is going to be a really slow team for early on, like I said. So you're going to want something that is going to do damage to all enemies. So let's see if we can find something here that uses purple and does damage to all enemies here. So Elamagaram is a Mythic Troop. If you do have that, it'll do damage to all enemies, and that will work good with Umberwolf. So there's that option. Obsidius doesn't do damage to all enemies, but it probably would be a decent option. Infernus is a decent option early game. You know, these are just mythic options. Obviously, the Possessed King could have some great mana generating potential. And let's see, what other troops in here? Let's see if we can find just like, well, Magnus here does damage to all enemies. That could be a good early option. Queen Titania does damage to all enemies. That could be used. Dragon Soul does damage to all enemies. You can use that early game. Fanyu Soulmorn also does damage to all enemies. Those are some legendary options, and then I'm sure there's probably a few non-legendary options that do damage to all enemies. You just have to scroll through here and find them. Like Hexrat does damage to an enemy and all enemies below them. So it's basically damage to all enemies, because you could select the first troop and then it'll just do damage to all enemies. So Hexrat's probably a really good non-legendary troop to use for early game, just to go through those quick early levels, you know, as fast as you can. As for weapons, again, colors aren't restricted. So if you do have Doom weapons, if you do have Dawnbringer, anything like that, if you don't have those, that's fine, because there's some pretty good class weapons that, like this one here, Creeping Death is a class weapon that deals damage to all enemies. You also have things like Dancing Daggers, which does damage to all enemies. You have Fiendfire, does damage to all enemies, and that uses purple. So if you still wanted to use Umberwolf, you could throw this in there early game. I might do something like that, you know. And then also something that, like, you want some kind of mana generator, since this is like purple, you know. So for example, let's go let's put Leprechaun in here, because that uses purple. And you know, we'll take Azirus out because we're not using Mang, and Keeper of Souls we could keep in there just because, like, it could be useful as far as doing all that. But we're going to just let's just run through like 1 or 2 battles with this team, and I just want to show you what I'm talking about. You just want something like this that's going to do damage to all enemies right here at the beginning, because as you can see, the health is very low here. 10, 6, 9, 14, their life is very low. Now, as you can see at the bottom here, we have this Darkstorm going, and that's all because of Umberwolf here being fully traded. And our weapon's going to power up really quick because we have those potions, because we bought some of those tiers. We have Explosion, we have Enchantment, and then with a Purple Storm going, it's just a recipe for success. And with that initial explosion, and then of course we got, you know, our Leprechaun there that we threw in just for like an extra quick mana generation. And a team like this is probably only going to be good for like maybe the first 5 levels. But if you used Mang in that other team I was showing for these early levels, it's going to take you so long to kill the enemy. So you kind of have to use a team like this early on and then switch it up to something that can handle those higher levels. Yeah, and like my weapon's filling up really quickly, and now I have my leprechaun here. We'll just do another explosion. And the explosion itself just killed the last enemy there, so we got a boss room unlocked. That was that last room down there. So we'll do this boss room real quick. And then that will conclude my video. So I could cast this and we could kill everything, but I just want to show you the ability here of the Keeper of Souls, because some of you may not really be aware of how awesome the Keeper of Souls actually is. Transform all gems with chosen color to skulls. So as you can see right here, we have purple. We can guarantee ourselves an extra turn by transforming purple into skulls. So we do that, guaranteed extra turn. And you can, when you're using Mang, that's really, really amazing to do that. So Keeper of Souls, great legendary troop for events like this where you need to create skulls in a very precise manner. Azirus is really great for that too. So, alright, there you go, guys. That's pretty much my thoughts on the Soulforge, what to craft, and showed you a couple of teams that you can use with that Book of Brambles and Scorpius. And also we took a look at the Tower of Doom event. So I appreciate you guys a lot. Love you guys, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Later.